Hi guys, I'm Ben Hurley. I'm a journalist with BRW magazine, and soon to be purely a digital-only publication. And I'm interviewing Daniel Friedman, who's the CEO of Ninja Blocks. Now, I'd like to say Ninja Blocks is a fabulous Australian company on many levels. One of them being that Daniel was actually hired in a pub. So I'd like you to just for a second to explain how that happens.
Yeah, it's I think it's a very Australian experience. Being hired in a pub. I was pitching a previous startup that I was working at a university, just to gain experience and get in front of people. And I'd actually left early on to meet with some clients, but two people who'd actually seen me, the two co-CEOs of ScriptRock, had seen me pitch, and by sheer fluke, we'd both found ourselves at the same pub, just Martin Place Bar around the corner. And it was absolutely amazing, sort of like, did you just pitch at CSC? I was like, yeah. It's like, oh, well, we saw you. That was all right. Like, there was, so we got to talking, got to drinking, and yeah, now I sort of find myself here somehow.
I love the ad hoc way things happen in the entrepreneur community. So I'd like to start, just for those who don't know the background about Ninja Block, what is a Ninja Block?
So a Ninja Block is a device that you plug into your home network, and it allows you to connect the devices around your home to the internet. Why that's kind of cool is that suddenly being able to control your lights or your air conditioner from your smartphone is kind of interesting and kind of great. We allow also sort of more advanced sort of interaction with them. We've created a rules engine already that allows you to do sort of if this then that rules. But that's sort of where we launched from. We launched via Kickstarter last year. We got about $100,000 from Kickstarter back. This is sort of before Pebble. So this, back then that was like a lot of money. Now you can get $300,000 for a plush toy. Well, Kickstarter, yes. So so we launched on Kickstarter and got a great backing from that. And that was sort of the concept that we pitched then, which was a device to connect, a hub to connect your devices to the internet.
And so let's talk about that. I mean, what are some of the things, you've sold 4,000 of them now around the world, and what are some of the things that people are doing with them?
Yeah, so what you get is a bunch of sensors, motion sensors and temperature, humidity sensors, and you can connect power sockets, smart light bulbs, air conditioners, televisions, pretty much an endless list. We've seen some really, really interesting stuff. I think one of the first ones we saw was, which caught us completely left field, was I think somebody in Norway, where he came into our forums and said, I have this, I thank you very much, Ninja. My house was broken into last night, and the police had to ask all these questions. Well, where were you? What time did it happen? But he was not out of his home at the time. And so what he did was he's able to go into our dashboard, look at the temperature in his living room, because it was quite cold there, and actually see the exact point that somebody had broken in because he'd left the door open. So he's able to go to the police and say, yep, it was 2 a.m. exactly, 2:05, I think was the time. And that was something we would not expect at all, just by having a temperature sensor in your living room that you could control, sense. And then people have gone on to do really, really interesting things. I think my favorite is, there's sort of an ad hoc security rule. We have a security app that's a bit more advanced, but before then, somebody had set up a rule that, if there's motion in his living room between midnight and 5 a.m., turn on all the lights, take a picture from all his webcams around his home, and then put it in his Dropbox. And he said I don't think he'd ever needed it, but the fact that he could do it in like 2 seconds was sort of amazing to him and to us as well. So there's it's kind of the endless of bounds when you're able to control your environment and sense your environment easily. Sort of the possibilities become quite amazing.
I mean, these people are kind of these people are the tinkerers. They're kind of the engineering geeks essentially that you've got on board at the moment. I mean, where do you see this ultimately going? You'd obviously like to hit this kind of holy grail of getting your products out into the mainstream more. And what kind of applications would you imagine them? Let's imagine a year or two ahead. Or 3, however long you need. What would you like to see people doing with your products?
Well, I think right now our stuff is somewhat limited. But it was designed a year ago, and we've learned so much since we released this and saw how people were using it. What we've realized now is that sort of simple home automation, simple if this then that, it kind of sucks. Like it's just, what happens is inevitably there's something cool that's used and used frequently, maybe 80% of the time. For example, if you would set up a night light through your living room that if you walk through and it's dark, turn on the lights and then turn them off. So most of the time, getting a glass of water, you can bring your lights up just ever so slightly so you can see, and then bring them down. And that's great most of the time until you sort of have a bunch of your mates over, and instead of impressing them, you just end up annoying them because the lights now start controlling themselves. And that I think is the problem with home automation as a subsection of the Internet of Things. I think what we need now, and what we're sort of looking towards in the future is a way where sort of your environment is aware of how things should be at different times, and sort of gives you control intelligently when you need it. For example, if you were the last person to leave home and the heater in your living room is still on, it would be fantastic if you could just buzz your phone and say, Ben, your heater's still on, what would you like to do? Turn off or ignore? That allows you to sort of not only save energy, but it doesn't take control away from you. It doesn't start, because if you just nipped out to grab a coffee and come right back, you can just ignore that. So we think, I think in the future, what we will hopefully see, and I think what we will see, is sort of environments that are aware of what's going on in it and are able to sort of give intelligent control to people who need it. So,
and that's your next product, right? I mean, you guys are actually planning another crowdfunding campaign potentially, and another big new product. Someone told me, I heard in the grapevine.
No, thank you for that segue. Well, we are looking to launch a new product soon. It's going to be a crowdfunding campaign as well, because there's still a lot we still have to figure out. We figured out most of the nuts and bolts, and we know how we can do it, but we obviously need a big support to be able to get that. One of the things we're looking to launch as well is sort of intelligent presence. This is another thing that's missing from this idea of home automation, is knowing who is where, I guess, reliably. Having a motion sensor is fine, but being able to say, well, like the kitty's at home and no one else is, and the heater's on, that's better. So if kitty's having the motion sensors go on, it doesn't matter. So what we're looking to develop is a product what we have developed in R&D is a product that is able to triangulate your location within your home to pretty reasonable accuracy, probably about a quarter of this room, and we're narrowing it down. It involves some machine learning algorithms that are above my pay grade, but yeah. But and the other thing as well on top of that is gesture control, or being able to sort of intelligently sort of like control your home with the swipe of a hand. Something a bit more natural. I mean, Internet of Things is great now. You can buy Philips Hue, you can buy LifeX, which is a great Melbourne-based crowdfunding campaign that was launched, and I think I heard they've got about $10 million in pre-sales. These are smart bulbs, so you can control any bulb throughout your home, dim them, change the colors. It's actually an amazing experience. But the problem is you have all these different apps, and I think what we're going to see going forward in the Internet of Things is there's a real pain point that well, I bought some Philips Hues and they're fantastic. I use them in my living room, but now I have sort of LifeX gifted to me on Christmas or whatever it may be. Now I have to switch between apps if I want to control my living room lights versus my kitchen lights. And it's just trying to keep track of which bulbs, vendor device. I mean, it's
so something that'll bring all of these apps together essentially.
Yeah.
Into one kind of central control, that potentially has a bit of a learning capability as well.
Yeah, exactly right. It's to bring all these devices together in something that kind of makes sense for a user. So not just using two thumbs to control your life, but maybe something a bit more natural, bringing down your lights with the drop of your hand, something like that.
I mean, I'm thinking it's probably a good time to talk a little about the Internet of Things. So the concept is that we see our current world as very interconnected, but in fact we're really not very connected at all, are we? When you start kind of reading about the Internet of Things, I mean, my watch or your glasses or those speakers or this microphone. I mean, very little of this room is actually connected to the internet, is it? And I mean, so it opens up a whole new kind of world, doesn't it? I mean, where do you see that going?
I think, I mean, you're completely right. It's generally considered that in the next decade, about 50 billion newer devices are going to be addressable via the internet. To give you an idea, that's about 4 times greater than everything already. So that's just in the next decade. And these are things like light bulbs and temperature sensors, almost anything you can see that has an electronic circuit. The cost of connecting that to Wi-Fi now is around the $5-6 mark. So you will see it initially in things like televisions already and air conditioners, these high value things. But putting them in watches and then putting them into shoes to track your running, so you can see how far you've run, is just getting cheaper and cheaper and more easy. I think what we'd hopefully see, and I think what we will see, is well, the benefit for having this, I should say. Let's start with the benefit. Why would anybody want this? Like, why is this a good thing, right? Like, there's a new Android phone out every other month, and you have to learn. The benefit, I think, is that if your environment is able to be controlled more reliably and sensibly by systems that can sort of know who's around, know who's there, the first thing that you inevitably end up is being able to control the environment a bit more reliably. But I know that sounds a bit of the antithesis of what we're going. This is sort of the 5 to 10 year mark, where if there's now there's sort of 50, 60 people in this room, it would start pumping up the air conditioning, because it just knows the sheer volume of phones in this room is indicative of a lot of people. I need to get the air conditioning going. But if there was 2 people here, they might not need to have it on full ball, so they could just have it down. So you're able to sort of have an environment that can sort of scale up and scale down its resource usage based on what is actually going on around it, instead of there. So that's the longer term vision, and I think to get there, you really have to sort of be able to learn about reliably who's there and what's there and what's expected, I guess.
And some security benefits as well. For example, if at midnight the wrong door in your house opens, and or something like that, there could potentially be this kind of intelligence around when something very unusual is happening that you should be alerted to, right? I mean, it could alert the police, or it could prevent a fire breaking out in your house, right? From your left on heater or something.
Yeah, exactly right. Nest, who have a great thermostat, it's a learning thermostat that adjusts your home's automation depending on who's there. They just released a smoke alarm. If you could have, a set of smoke alarms with better sensors, more reliable sensors in more remote locations. For example, there was a great paper that I read for that. Basically, what people are looking to do is to put reliable and low-power sensors all over the electricity grids in remote locations. Now, if they're all connected via the internet, they're able to, in theory, be able to shut off power if there is sort of a complete spike in carbon monoxide usage. So, the problem here is that it's the idea of using the internet to control things or sense things has been sort of very consumer-oriented. But when you break it out, when you sort of like expand it forward, being able to intelligently control the electricity grid if there's a bushfire that comes out that can prevent further damage, it just sort of makes sense and it's easy. So,
I mean, we should talk about some of the things that scare people a little about this as well. I mean, our good friends in America have possibly demonstrated some of the pitfalls of every single thing being connected to the internet, with the NSA business that's been going over. So, I mean, where do you see that? Where do you see that? Do you see the potential security concerns that might come up with this vast amount of data that covers all the different aspects of how we live, going, into the private sector, into government agencies, what have you?
There's a term big data now. I think once we actually see all of these devices coming into existence on the internet and recording these sensor values for all of these devices, I mean, big data is going to be this adorable little thing we used to call big data, but now is actually big data. Because, it's an order of magnitude more devices than we have right now. And so the idea is basically, well, how can we sort of have a system that we benefit from the control and we can use reliably, but isn't subject to sort of nefarious purposes or legitimate but still overstepping the bounds. We think personally, and what we're looking to sort of work towards is a world where the Internet of Things is open source. We'd like to see the internet go the way of Linux as opposed to Microsoft. Linux is the de facto standard for security in terms of servers, and everybody knows of it. It took a long time to get there, to be sure, but now it is trusted and reliable and just makes sense. We think the Internet of Things needs to get there in terms of control systems, and what we're looking to do actually in the coming months is open source our entire platform. So just to open source absolutely everything in a very phased way that is sensible and reliable, and obviously have penetration testing and all the rest of it along the way. But we want to open source our entire platform that allows people to be able to rely on this.
Oh yeah, all right. And I would like to ask just more in the Australian arena of things, attracting talent. I mean, your company obviously, you've got a very interesting product and a very cool product, but you don't have much money. So how do you bring engineers and talent aboard that are capable of handling that kind of technical challenge?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting engineering problem we have. I mean, it's across the entire, it's everything from network to wireless radios. I mean, and across the spectrum. I think for us, at least for me, I like to think I really believe in this. I think I do, and that and that I'm sort of passionate about. I think this is what people will be willing to. That people will get on board with you if you're passionate and you believe in what you're trying to bring and the vision. And I think that is something that has to be there if you're in an early stage startup. And one that has a small amount of dollars but the potential to go absolutely huge. So if you really believe in yourself, I think it's easier than you'd think.